The town of Farmington. Respecting history, planning the future.
We will begin our council meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Brian, if you could start us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, and this evening we are welcoming our state legislators visiting with us. Mike D'Amico, they're pushing you. You get to come up first. Derek Slapp, Giannaris Pizarro, thank you and welcome to the grilling for the evening. So if you all would like to start off and tell us how you're doing with the beginnings of the budget season, we'd love to hear.
Representative, do you want to begin? You're Mr. Farmington, and you've been serving the longest of of us.
Yeah, I generally defer to the senators, but I'll be happy to start if you like. The legislative session just started last Wednesday, as I'm sure you're aware. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. I appreciate the fact that you guys invite us here every year to kind of talk about what's coming up in the legislature. So this is yet another opportunity to have a discussion. So the legislative session started on Wednesday. I'm sure each of us took different takeaways from what the governor had to say. I personally was impressed with his emphasis on environmental issues, since I am one of the co-chairs of the Environment Committee, and that's important to me, and it's certainly important to all the residents of Connecticut. I was struck by his emphasis on workforce development and on job training and growing our cities and retaining our talented workforce here in Connecticut. So I think that the legislature and the governor are going to work hopefully closely together to be able to make sure that we can build on those initiatives and move our state forward. Those are the big takeaways for me: workforce development, environmental issues, and focusing on the cities. And certainly, the big, as he himself said, the elephant in the room is transportation. So that's something that we have to make a real serious commitment to, and that's going to be something that is going to be a problem for all of us until we get our arms around it and deal with it. So that might start some conversation, but I'll leave it at that, and I'll let my colleagues take it from there.
Representative D'Amico. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gennaro Pizarro. I am State Senator for the 6th District. This is my first time before all of you, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I thank you all very much. And I will start by just commenting that I am really proud to be part of this delegation. I'm a part of a couple of other delegations as well, because my district spans into different towns, and I can say sincerely that we, I think, work very well together, even though we're on different sides of the aisle, and that's the way it should be. So I'm pleased to be here with these two fine gentlemen today, along with the two of them and Representative Exum. We've already demonstrated an ability to collaborate with one another. We've worked with several of you on a couple of projects already, the Parsons Parcel project. We've been involved in meetings with DOT, and hopefully you've found our involvement to be helpful, and I anticipate that we'll continue to be involved in that going forward. But we really do work well together, so I'm glad to be here. And we've also decided apparently tonight that our new delegation uniform is going to be dark suits with purple ties. I too I was very optimistic in listening to the governor's address last week. Unfortunately, the devil's in the details. I'm in the minority up there. We don't have the votes, quite frankly. The Republicans in the Senate don't have the votes to pass anything on our own. So a lot of my time is spent playing defense on matters that I think are things that are going to harm the district. And I've been very vocal with respect to things that I think are bad news economically, and I'll continue to do so. Besides that, in general, my priorities for this session are going to be the same as they were last year, and that is to continue to find ways to bring back dollars to our municipalities. Fight for whatever I can with respect to bonding. And try to break the log jams that are up there at the Capitol, and then just anything that continues to move the state forward economically, workforce development, manufacturing, which I think is a big issue for this entire area. So those are the things that I'm looking at on a general sense. Specifically, one item that I'm going to make a little bit of a pet project. I have requested, and for those of you who don't know, and maybe those in the audience who are listening, in an even-numbered year, the legislators can't raise bills individually unless they relate to finance. So we request through the committee chairs that the committee itself raises a particular bill. I have asked for a bill to be raised to impose term limits on legislators. I've asked that a bill be raised to impose a term limit of a total of 10 years between both chambers. That would have to be by constitutional amendment. I'm not sure where that would go, but that's something specific that I've undertaken that I thought I would share with all of you. I'm glad to be here tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, I'll be brief because I know that you all probably have some questions. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues by, one, thanking you all for having me here. I'll do a quick introduction. And, I think it was 2 years ago, because it's every year around this time, this week, that this was on Valentine's Day. So my wife was very pleased that that it's not on the 14th. That'll be on Friday. So we're in good shape. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Derek Slapp, relatively new state senator, so was just elected in a special election on February 26th, so replacing Senator Bai, who had served for a little while. I was a state rep for one term prior to that and had a very small section of Farmington. So I'm not new to Farmington, but now I have a bigger section of Farmington, and Representative Exum replaced me in the House. So I did switch some committees. I came in and they gave me kind of some immediate committee assignments, but it was halfway through the session, so some of those have changed. So I'll let you know what those are real briefly. So I'm chair of the Aging Committee. In fact, I just got a request from Senator Bizzarro and a few of his colleagues to raise a bill about helping folks who are on fixed incomes, who get a certain amount of an allowance, essentially per personal needs allowance, to increase that. And hopefully we'll have bipartisan support to do that. But anyway, so I'm chair of the Aging Committee, vice chair of Human Services, and then I'm also on Commerce and Higher Education. So we're it's an interesting mix. So Commerce, and it's all about trying to make sure that we continue to have an environment where businesses can grow and prosper, and that they have the workforce that they need. So that's going to be a focus on Commerce. Human Services is kind of all over the gamut with Department of Social Services and folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I mean, you name it, it's really, the social service part of state government. And then aging, and one of my top priorities, and it doesn't directly, let's say, affect the municipality itself of Farmington, but it does affect a lot of people in Farmington, and that's helping to combat age discrimination in the workplace. And we have, I love whenever I can to work across the aisle and bring all the stakeholders together, and we've been able to do that on this bill with Republican co-sponsors, and the CBIA has actually come and supported the bill, and spoke at the news conference, but we're going to close a loophole for our seniors and make sure that job applications don't have dates of birth and graduation dates and that kind of thing. The thought is you can't ask that in an interview, and we shouldn't be able to vet our seniors. So we have the 6th oldest workforce in the country, so that's going to help our economy and help our seniors. So anyway, related to the budget, which I know is, everybody's really focused on, right? Because that, we all fear the mid-year cut to municipal aid, which I know you all you want a reliable state budget, that we're not lurching from one budget crisis to the next. You remember back a couple years ago, we didn't have a budget until Halloween, which was not a treat. That was a real problem, and we did pass a law to prohibit the governor from cutting ECS funds during the fiscal year. That bill was vetoed. It was in the budget, but that provision expired. And I do think we should, go back to that and really prohibit ECS cuts during the year, because it can really be devastating for our schools and for our students. So the good news in the budget address, I think, and the budget address itself is a speech. It's interesting. I mean, we can kind of hear what the executive branch has as some of its priorities, so that's good. But as Senator Bizzarro said, the devil's in the details. Right now, the state budget, the 2-year budget, is for the most part holding. It's I think the last projection I saw was about 28 million. Some estimates have it a little bit more in terms of in deficit. But with a $40 billion biennial budget, I think for the most part, we may have to make some cuts. I don't see any cuts coming to municipal aid. I've been warned sometimes about making predictions, but I think that I do not see those passing or ECS. So I think that for the most part, hopefully this will be a stable year, and then the following year is the two-year budget, so we'll be back at it again. We're very eager. I think I shouldn't speak for my colleagues, but I could say I am very eager to hear from you all in terms of what you think the lay of the land is with high school, and I know that's something that many of you are thinking about. Be ready to pick up the baton from you, and once the town of Farmington comes up with a plan that it believes in and is united behind, then I'm very eager to do everything I can to secure state funding to be a good partner with you all in that. So I don't want to filibuster. Maybe I'll leave it at that and then let you all ask questions for any of us. But again, thanks for having me here, and I really look forward to working with all of you. And I am a strong believer in once the election is over, we put the D and the R aside and we all work together. I think we have many more common interests and goals and values for the town of Farmington than we do differences. So that's the spirit with which I'm approaching you all and our public service together. So with that, I will stop and conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Appreciate all your comments. I particularly appreciate the last comment. That's something that we've said on our body here as well. We're political once every 2 years when we run for office. Other than that, we're looking out for the best interests of Farmington. So thank you for repeating that. I'm going to open it up to questions. Just if we could limit to one question until everyone's gotten at least one out, then we can circle back. Who'd like to start? Peter?
I'll take one. This relates to Parsons Curve. The town of Farmington has put a lot of time and effort through public meetings, hiring consultants, having a great deal of public input into potentially what might go into that area. And right now, it seems to be we're at a stalemate based on this town, or the state owns the property, and the town wants to move forward and potentially purchase this property, but I think we're getting held up in the bureaucracy of the DOT and the DEEP. So I'm speaking generally, and I know you guys know the details. What can we do to streamline this to get it on the front burner? Because the towns and the people have spent a lot of time, working on this issue, and we're kind of not moving anywhere, it seems to be right now. People have asked me about it. Yeah. So what can you guys do for us to get these two departments to start talking to one another, meaning the DOT and the DEEP, to pick up the pace on this.
So I'll jump in. My recollection is that there was a specific issue about getting information from the DOT a few months ago, and I thought that all got resolved, and that the information was eventually provided. Maybe not in the form exactly that the town was looking for, but it was provided.
I think, Peter, and correct me if I'm wrong, is talking like kind of in more general terms. You guys have been very helpful of doing that. It's just that I think one of the big things that we finally have grasped is that the DOT, as you probably know, is not required to follow the same rules and regulations that everyone else is, that a municipality is or that a developer is. So it still comes down to that we're trying to get verification on what the contamination is on the DOT property. And because DOT doesn't have to get verification, the same verification that we do, we're basically trying to get on that property again to get verification. And the thing that I just don't understand, and is there legislation or is there a reason why the DOT doesn't have to follow the environmental rules that everyone else has to follow?
So, Representative D'Amico and I met with the DOT officials a couple months ago regarding this, and it's a little more complicated than that. I know that, from on the surface it may seem like it's just bureaucratic red tape at the DOT level, but it's actually not. So, OPM changed their guidelines last year, and they have new guidelines now. It used to be a lot easier to get access easements, temporary easements to access the property for purposes of testing or for purposes of construction or whatever. They've altered their policies now where they're issuing licenses, and unfortunately there is a backlog, and OPM needs to approve all of these license requests, and it's not just with DOT, it's with across other agencies as well. And that's something that's beyond the control of DOT. So DOT is at the mercy of the OPM review, just like any other agency is. That's part of the problem, and I'm not sure that portion was conveyed to all of you, but that is one of the issues that is holding up the process, Peter. And there are many projects across the state. It's not just this particular project. I have projects in other municipalities that I am advocating for, and they are held up by the same thing.
So what's, for instance, a license? What inhibits you from getting, what's the process?
I can't speak to the particulars of it. There's an application process that goes in. OPM reviews it like they would anything else, and they have to approve the granting of the license by DOT, for your experts, your consultants to go on the property. And that's part of the holdup.
Yeah, definitely, and we're aware of that, and we have the license agreement and things of that nature. But one of the big, and it's not the representatives, it's the system, is that DOT has basically insisted that the property is clean, but they will not verify that it's clean because they're not required to verify it. And I understand why they don't do it, because they're not required to, and that's a liability issue for them. So it's such a much longer process, because now we have to come in as the town to verify the DOT's work, when if someone else was doing it, not the DOT was doing a project, they would have a verification letter that says it's clean. But they're not required by law to get a verification letter. So that's where part of the problem is too, is that we're going back on the property, and then we have to get the license agreement, which again slows down the process too. And it is a process. It's just, I guess there's just a level of frustration, not at you all, just of how it all works.
Yes, not at you. It's
Right, and we understand that, and unfortunately, when you're dealing with the state, it's not as simple as dealing with a private entity. You know that there are layers of complexities that are involved that there wouldn't be in a private deal. That's just the nature of dealing with the state as a seller or grantor in the property. The good news is that I did, in my discussions with DOT, I was led to believe that they anticipated that the logjam would break in the near future. They understand that there are a number of projects that are being held up because of these reviews. Essentially what's happening is my understanding is OPM is trying to develop a template that they can then implement on going forward. This may or may not, it may be, one of the first deals that they are issuing this kind of license on. So unfortunately for Farmington, that's the reality of the situation. But, having said all that, I mean, we've already met with DOT a couple of times, and, I think I speak for all of us, we're happy to continue to do so. They know that this is something that's of particular importance to all of us as part of the delegation, and, I've been assured that, that they're giving it, from the DOT perspective, as much priority as they possibly can. They're interested in getting this wrapped up too.
Right. And they did give us the new agreement, and we're in the process of filling it out. And they did say that they would be able to do a quick turnaround for us. So they did say that.
Chris? Thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate it very much. As the immediate past chair of the Board of Education, that has particular interest for me. And as I think has interest for everybody here, because the Board of Education budget makes up about over 60% of our town's overall budget. But Derek, can I just direct this to you and everybody, but you touched on it, but can you address ECS funding? I mean, you said that they're not going to passing a law to not cut it, but ECS funding has a very significant programmatic impact to us in addition to financial impact to Farmington. So can you just talk about the formulas, any changes, what you see as the future of ECS funding for Farmington?
Yeah, I think the formula that there was a bipartisan formula that was agreed to in the not the budget that we passed a year ago, but previously, one that took so long, and I think it provides some stability and some predictability for municipalities. And I don't think that we went through this just a couple years ago when. There was a proposal it wasn't just ECS, but as you probably recall, it was also the teacher's pension that was going to be put onto the cost of the towns. And, we came together, both Republicans and Democrats in the legislature, and said that's not where we want to go, in part because of the fear that would have on local education in our schools, but also on our property taxpayers as well. So I think you're going to see again, some real stability with ECS over the next few years. I will say that I think the integrity of our rainy day fund is important because it will help protect us not if, but when the next recession comes. And obviously none of us know when that's going to be. I mean, if we did, we'd be we'd be wealthy, I guess. But it does give us some predictability, and I hear that from the towns that I represent, and also the business community as well, that we don't want to live in fear of, oh my gosh, we're going to have a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit, and when it comes to whether it be ECS or tax rates or whatever, that, as soon as the next recession hits, watch out, right, that, the state's going to be in a fiscal crisis. So I don't know if that answers your question, but, and we talked we met with the Board of Ed, what was it, a few weeks ago? We talked about ECS a little bit. It always comes up with when we talk about with the Board of Ed in terms of special education costs, which are a big driver, I know, in your budget, and also mandates. And we said, look, we're happy to look at if you have a list of mandates and that you think are burdensome that you want us to look at, we'd be happy to do that. And then with special education costs, having the town pick up the state rather pick up a greater share is something that. I certainly would support. The question, of course, is where's the money going to come from? But it should be a priority because I hear more than anything else, not just from Farmington, but West Hartford as well, top concern, without a doubt, property taxes. And that ties directly into it. So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Joe.
Staying on the schools, obviously, we're doing this whole school project. Anything the Farmington can do to maximize that 20% reimbursement for the new build?
I could jump in, but go ahead.
Well, just a brief comment. I know that the superintendent's office has been working with the officials at the state level to make sure that what they come up with for a plan fits the guidelines. So in other words, right now, you're correct, Joe. We are scheduled to get a 20% reimbursement for a new build. But that is predicated on the design falls within certain guidelines, square footage and amount of space devoted to this versus amount of space devoted to that. So I'm confident that the committee and the superintendent are going to continue to work with the state to make sure that they, fall within the guidelines. Beyond that, it's up to us, to make sure that we get our 20% reimbursement. And I have no reason to think that we won't get it. So if there are special ways that we can, ensure that or maybe even increase that, I'll be happy to, listen to that and pursue that. Maybe my colleagues know more about that than I do.
Anything you want to add?
No, I think Representative D'Amico said it pretty succinctly. I mean, short of that, beyond that, I'm not going to vote for tolls, so I'm not going to trade a toll vote for any additional consideration. So that's about it. I think you got it all. For the record, I am joking.
I would say I won't take my good senator's bait, but only to say that I think it is important as much as possible for the town to have one voice when it comes to the project and just to be united. And that's obviously work that you all need to do with your constituents and with ours too, but just to have a proposal that you feel great about, that you can rally around, I think that certainly helps our case to then, pick up the baton and then go to the state and like Representative D'Amico said, and then not fight, but work very, very hard for, for that percentage.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. D'Amico, thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Oh, thank you. This is probably one of the biggest projects that we're taking on for the town. It would be really nice if we could get your support, too, with this project, to stand behind us, help us support, especially for the public, to see us out there, all of us, hand in hand, trying to get this passed. And we would really appreciate it if you could.
Look, I will just echo what Senator Slapp just said. The town needs to figure out what it wants to do. We went through the painful experience 2.5 years ago of having a project, put forward to the voters, and then it got rejected, pretty soundly in the referendum. So the town needs to get behind a plan, and then yes. You will have the support of the legislators, but first you need to come up with, this is what the town wants and this is what the town will support.
Yeah, no, that's why we have a building committee, and we're on our way right now. Just want to make sure we have your support. Yeah.
Ed?
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Staying on the school project topic, clearly that's a high priority for us. I don't know if any of you know how much money the state has bonded for school projects. One concern I think that came up last time around with some of the residents was that some people were saying, maybe because of the budgetary situation at the time, the state wasn't going to be able to provide its share of the funds for the project. Can you kind of put those concerns aside for us?
And I just want to make sure I understand your question. You're saying that that you're concerned about kind of the state budget situation impacting what the state reimbursement rate, or?
Yeah. So the previous referendum that we had, there was also kind of a impasse with the state budget, and some residents in town were were making an assumption that maybe the state wasn't going to be able to pay its 20% of the project. And I'm asking, can you kind of basically give us the confidence that that's not really a concern?
Well, and my colleagues can jump in, and we may have a friendly difference of opinion here, and that's fine. That's what democracy is all about. I can't, because I don't know what's going to happen with transportation. And if we have to max out our already maxed out state credit card, all on transportation, with all of us paying 100% of it, and we have a governor that's committed to a debt diet, and a lot of us probably think that makes some sense because there's been a lot of bonding, and bonding is nearly 30% of our state budget. I mean, it's growing, and it's squeezing out really important spending on other things like public education. If we don't find a dedicated revenue stream for transportation, half of which, by the way, would come from out of state, then I cannot, right, I don't think any of us can up here can say that that doesn't put funding for other things, right? Doesn't make funding for other things more precarious, harder to secure. It does, they're connected, you know? And so how it's gonna end, I don't know. I mean, we've been trying to, the legislators have been in the governor's office, and, you know, as we all know, this has played out in the press over the last year. We hear that there's a special session. It's going to be coming potentially next week on the 19th. I think we marked the date or something. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not, because, you know, it's going to be very, very close to see what happens with transportation, and I don't think it's finalized yet. So my point is that they are connected, and we know that because we haven't done a bonding bill yet, and as you know, you're waiting for your town aid road, and that's being held up. So it's all connected. We only have so much money as a state that we can borrow. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
No, I would agree. I think the point is that we can't guarantee anything, Councilman. Is the money there? Yeah, I mean, the money is available. It's just a question of prioritizing where it's going. So it's all in the allocation of it. So, I mean, you know, is there a guarantee? No, absolutely not. Is it likely that the town will receive it? I would say probably. You know, and as Representative D'Amico said, we will do our part. You know, that our role is to advocate and be, you know, fierce advocates on behalf of the town to make sure that you get every dollar that you're entitled to, and we will do that.
Maybe I should rephrase my question a little bit. Has a situation like that happened in recent memory where the state wasn't able to fund a school project that was passed?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, if the bonding, yeah, I mean, the question is, are you going to get it approved and get the reimbursement approved or not? You know, it's not a question of, well, we were going to, but then, you know, we didn't have the money to do it. You always have the money. It's a question of where it's going to be allocated.
I'll just jump in briefly. So and in agreement with both of my colleagues, you know, there are no guarantees in life. But the one thing that you can do is look back at past history, and especially recent history. You know, over the last several years, both the governor and the legislature have been committed to municipal aid and preserving it as best as can be done, especially under difficult economic circumstances. And also, the governor and the legislature have been committed to education funding and school bonding money. You know, so there were many opportunities in the past based on, you know, difficult economic circumstances to pull back on some of that, you know, education money, you know, municipal aid money, and we didn't do it because we knew what a disaster it would be for all the cities and towns. So if we didn't do it 10 years ago and we didn't do it 5 years ago, projecting ahead, I'm going to assume we're not going to do it, you know, going forward. But again, you know, I can't guarantee you the sun's going to come up tomorrow, but I'm pretty confident that it will, right? So, you know, I can't guarantee you that you're going to, you know, what's going to happen. But based on past history and the commitment that the governor and the legislature have made to cities and towns, and especially in the field of education, you know, I'm pretty confident that, you know, and I think you should be confident too. How's that?
Brian.
Yeah, I do have a question for you. Thank you all for coming, and I'm glad that you came to speak. And the question I have, as we are exploring the opportunity of having a new high school here in Farmington, and the wonderful benefits that it will bring to our town, both in commerce and in community and in education. One of the other things we're looking at is at the impact that it's going to have on our citizens here in town when we do it. And as we're doing that, we're creating a subcommittee that will explore tax relief for seniors. So my question is there anything that the state has that would assist in tax relief for seniors possibly that would impact the town of Farmington?
I don't want to monopolize guys, but I just wanted to, say, so I'm glad you brought up the tax relief, because that was something, when I was sitting up there, the first year that I was sitting up there in one of those chairs.
That one over there.
CJ remembers. We did a tax relief, we expanded the tax relief program for seniors and disabled, right in the Farmington, because, we had a consensus of the council that it was the right thing to do. So that's certainly something that is near and dear to me, to relieve the pressure on seniors and those on fixed incomes. That's my experience at the town level, and I was glad that we were able to do that. At the state level, again, I'm going to let my senatorial colleagues jump in, and I don't know if there is anything, honestly.
Well, there's legislation that allows for circuit breakers to be in place that would, provide some level of relief in terms of property taxes that are paid there. I am personally requesting that a bill be raised that would freeze property taxes for seniors who have resided in a municipality for a certain number of years, and also I'm requesting that a bill be raised that would allow seniors who own more than one vehicle to elect one vehicle to be not subject to the motor vehicle tax. So, there are things like that, little initiatives, but yeah, there are globally across the state, there are at the state level, there are mechanisms that will allow municipality to provide some degree of relief to seniors in terms of property taxes.
Councilman, your timing is perfect. So, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, I'm chair of the Senate Chair of the Aging Committee, and we actually voted to raise, which is essentially create these bills today. And one is directly related to what Senator Bizzarro mentioned in terms of freezing property taxes for seniors who have been in their homes for a certain amount of time. I think it was 40 years was the number that that came up. So we did vote to raise that bill, which means there'll be a public hearing on that bill. Another one about motor vehicles. Of course, I think we just need to be cognizant of that. One, that it's permissive for towns, but also if we're doing things that would take revenue away from the towns, we don't want to just, shift the burden from seniors to increasing property taxes, let's say, for other residents. So there are some creative things that I think we could do in terms of there's a talk about a state, like a fund, a revolving loan fund that would help kind of reimburse the towns, for a potential loss of revenue. So we're looking at those type of things that would be kind of cost neutral for the state. There was one idea actually in the meeting today to kind of a tweak to Senator Bizzarro's bill, and we started having a great bipartisan discussion about it, is that if the seniors were going to have a freeze or whatever, that they should be residents of the state. So in other words, if the 6 months and a day down in Florida, and so they're not paying state income tax, and they have, let's say, 2 homes in Florida and 2 homes up here or whatever, that should they be, for that tax year, be required to be a resident of the state. And so that was interesting. We didn't get to consensus on that, but that was another twist. Last thing I'll say, just to close, is that we did do right, I think, by seniors, not on, and I'm not specifically related to property tax here, but on the state income tax on Social Security. We were one of 14 states to have a state income tax on Social Security. This current tax year, we have eliminated that for single filers up to 75,000, joint filers, I believe, 100,000. So that's the vast majority of seniors. There's still obviously many who are above that, but I think it's a start, and it will give some relief this year to many, many seniors in Farmington.
Thank you.
And since it's been about 13 or 14 years, I would throw it back to you, Brian, and maybe it's time to revisit the Farmington Senior Tax Relief program and see if that needs a little tweaking or modernizing. How's that?
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it's part of our strategic plan, so thank you.
You read it.
Mike got the cliff notes before this. I want to thank you all for coming here. A few nice things we heard. You're trying to keep municipal aid static. The ECS numbers we're expecting to be fairly similar. That was very encouraging to hear. Your support for the high school. Right now, we're still in the early phases, but we've supported the building committee's new structure. One of the concerns, and you've heard it, I think, is what type of funding we can get. I understand you all are going to have your numbers, I think, before we go to referendum. So once you know what the transportation numbers are and you can feel more comfortable with the dollars we should be getting, right now it's called that 20% for a new building. I'm hopeful that you all will be vocal in supporting us and make sure we get whatever we can. To that 20% for a new building, I'd like to kind of toss back to you all on the state level the concept that a new building gets 20% and a renovation gets 30%. Listening to our building committee going through those two options and the risk and time involved in a renovation, you're dealing with remediation issues. You're dealing with kids being around a renovated project for 4 years or more versus closer to 2 years. These were some of the things that encouraged us to look at a new building versus a renovation. So it's a little discouraging that the state is trying to dissuade us from building a new building by, in essence, not giving us as much encouragement or support for a new building. So I'd ask that you look into that and see if that's something that could be considered and what the reasoning was behind it to begin with. It's obviously costing the town more to build a new building than to renovate an old one. And the reasons I just mentioned are why we're looking at a new one right now. But again, when we're looking for your vocal support, you should know what your transportation costs are, and hopefully at that point you can say, yes, you're all in, you're going to get everything you can for our support here. So thank you. Other than that, I appreciate your coming, Representative Miko, Senator Bizzarro, Senator Slapp, thank you. This is always an entertaining evening. I think it was easier this evening than some years have been. We didn't even touch on the teacher's pension, which was, I think, last year's big issue. So thank you. Unless anyone has anything else to add, just say I appreciate your coming.
Again, you gave me the opportunity, so I'm just going to say, I think Derek might have touched on it. I mean, that has come up several years in a row now, the teacher's pension. But again, every legislator in that building knows that it's going to be really harmful to their town. So it gets pushed back against every year. We push back against Governor Malloy, and I suspect we'll push back again against this governor, because that's just something that is just untenable for legislators who have to, go back and put that burden on their individual towns.
Thank you. You're free to go.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Item D. Paul.
A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, February 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Farmington Town Hall Council Chambers to consider the purchase of property owned by William L. Wallenberg III and Paul A. Wallenberg, located at 8489 Meadow Road, approximately 11.38 acres for a price of $108,000. Dated at Farmington, Connecticut, this 27th day of January 2020, Kathleen A. Blonsky, Town Manager.
Thank you. Mr. Wadsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Town Council. My name is Bill Wadsworth. I reside at 73 Red Oak Hill Road here in Farmington, and I'm here on behalf of the Town of Farmington as a member of the Land Acquisition Committee. With me is Liz Dolphin, also a member of the committee, and she'll be working this together. So we're here to present for your consideration the purchase of lot 8458? 89 Meadow Road. A description of property, first we'll start out with its broad location. Go to the next slide. You see this square in the center of the map here, that's the approximate location of the parcel, which is in the central part of town. We're going to zoom in a little bit on this. This is what we typically call the north and south meadows. And so this parcel is part of the larger tract of that land. And just as a little bit of background, the town of Farmington purchased these properties most of them back in the 70s. And right now they total about 401 acres of prime farmland. They are currently rented out to 7 local farmers. And the Wallenberg parcel is one of the parcels that will be one of the few last privately held parcels of this tract of land. Zoom in again, please. To the north, we have, as I said, town-owned farmland. To the south, town-owned farmland. To the east, town-owned farmland. And to the west, there is town of Farmington open space, along with another privately held farm, the Eaton Farm. Access to this piece of property is both on frontage on Meadow Road for the entire length, and on Red Oak Hill Road. There are 2 gravel drives on either side, on the west side for entrance from the north or from the south. The owner is currently Paul and William Wallenberg. The size of the parcel is 11.3 acres. The zoning is in the flood protection zone, and the land characteristics are obviously farmland. Topography is flat. The habitat's a wildlife corridor, and it meets the requirements of item 1B of the land acquisition procedures as open space and land that has significant scenic, topographic, conservation, or wilderness value based on the characteristics of the land. Transaction history, it was placed on our list back in 2002, and it complied with item 4 of the Land Acquisition Committee procedures. It was approved to be listed by the Conservation Commission, and this all came from a verbal request from Bill Wallenberg, indicating that the owner would be agreeable to sell. Town of Farmington had an appraisal done on the property on February 28, 2018, and that appraisal came in at 11.3 acres worth $108,000 or $9,490 per acre. And that is a raw acreage number. Justification, as I said, this would add to our current inventory of farmland. So it would add to the 401.9 acres. It's prime farmland. It has a scenic value that many people appreciate as you drive through the, quote, flats, the South Meadows. Some other parcels in town that match that kind of thing in Vista is the Hillstead Museum. People drive by that. It's privately held. But any day it could be turned into a development if they chose to. So people have value in these vistas. Another recent one we did was the Grabowski piece on Plainville Avenue that went into town of Farmington open space. So people have an expectation of seeing that that will continue in perpetuity. So during the negotiations, from the Wallenberg response, we did come to an agreement, as I said, of a price of $108,000. We're giving the Wallenbergs, actually Paul Wallenberg, life use of the property, the 11.38 acres, along with the farm stand, the pole barn, and the gravel entries. Further considerations, State of Connecticut grant program. We'll make an attempt to submit to that. A phase 1 environmental study will be done, and a survey will be done on the property. And I believe we have a letter of support,
We do.
which Liz will read.
We received a letter of support from the town planner, Mark DeVoe. Dear Chairman Thomas, I'm writing to voice support of the proposed purchase of the property at the above referenced address lot designation. One of the most basic tenets of open space preservation efforts in Farmington has been to preserve farmland. Thus far, the town has done exceptionally well at that task. Support for the preservation of farmland is prevalent throughout all of the primary town planning documents. Specifically, this parcel has been on the town's radar since 2006, where it is included as a prime open space target. The parcel was then mentioned again with specificity in the Plan of Conservation and Development, amended to November 5th, 2016. In a more recent update, 2018, the farmland preservation effort was again emphasized. Incorporate farmland, both active and non-active, into the town's open space plan and land acquisition program. Forward-thinking communities across Connecticut recognize the contribution that farmland has made to the aesthetic character of their respective towns and its enhancement to the quality of life they enjoy. I am pleased to remind you that Farmington has surpassed the goal of the state of Connecticut has set for itself in setting aside open space. In doing so, they've made great strides to preserve the very strong farming heritage which is prevalent in Farmington. In addition, by setting aside active agricultural land, the town has strengthened its resiliency to changing weather patterns by preserving land that historically served as flood storage area. The effort has also created a local food resource not many towns and cities in this area of CT can match, while preserving aesthetic qualities that make Farmington uniquely Farmington. Finally, these benefits cannot be overshadowed by the positive economic development effects that preservation and aesthetic work so silently to support. Suffice to say that my office fully supports this acquisition and strongly commends the work of the Land Acquisition Committee for their efforts. Sincerely, Mark DeVoe, AICP Town Planner.
Thank you, Liz, and with that, we can turn it over for questions.
Actually, we're going to open it up. Is there any public comment on this issue? On this issue only? Hearing none. We move on to the next item on the agenda. We're going to close this public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any new items? No new items. F, this is public comment for any other issues you'd like to discuss. Any other public comment? Please state your name, your address, and comments to 5 minutes.
All right.
You know the drill.
Good evening. Tim Kelly, 62 Westview. I think my comments will actually be on topic this evening, so you'll appreciate that. I believe it is time for structural change to our local property tax system, given where the town of Farmington is today. Here are a few interesting numbers to consider. 25 years ago, the Board of Ed budget was 53% of the total town budget. And that was in the middle of the big millennial kid population boom. Right now, our student population is about 15% of the total town population, so about 4,100 kids against roughly 26,000. Now today, if you add the proposed school budget, the annual operating plan of $70.5 million, and then the school capital requests, which is everything from computers to carpets, it's 2.5, in-kind services, which is everything from ground maintenance to pensions, another $3 million. And then you also add debt payments we're making on school buildings and renovations, and then a portion, a certain amount of the remaining town services like police, fire, sidewalk, snow plows, recreation stuff, et cetera, you can come up to a number of $86 million. Now, if I look at last year's budget and add 3%, your target, that brings us to a total town budget of 115. So that would mean 86 out of 115, about 75% of the total town dollars now would be going towards 15% of our population. And that's before doing anything to the high school. Look, it's great to be a kid in Farmington. We don't want to change that, but it may be time for a structural adjustment to our residential property tax system, particularly if we also plan to add a major project financing for the proposed new high school. Now, this has obviously been discussed before, and I know other towns around the country do it. I've had the opportunity for home ownership in other high-tax states like New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts. I would recommend that we freeze the residential property tax on homes of senior citizens over the age of 65. These are the people who aren't going to get a raise next year or compete for that promotion at work. And it's really a fairness issue to bring more balance into the system going forward. Now, I certainly don't want us to create a bureaucracy where we analyze incomes and assess wealth and try to determine carried forward interest and all that. Just simply do it based on an age cutoff. And when people downsize or move away or pass away, these houses likely revert back to a younger owner and therefore would reset on a standard town tax roll. So in closing, I would just say candidly, I'm not sure you can pass a big high school referendum without doing this first. And we should not wait for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none. Reading of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the January 14th, 2020 regular town council meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve the January 28th, 2020 regular town council meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I make a motion to pass, the January 30th, 2020 regular town council meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Make a motion to approve the February 4th, 2020 special town council meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Corrections? Adjustments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item H, reading of communications and written appeals. The items are,
We have two correspondents, one from Judge Daly and then the response from CJ.
and they're in the packet and online.
And I think our intent is that we're going to meet with the judge and discuss her concerns.
The judge doesn't always have this full space of our council chambers as she did today on a very popular item. So there are space concerns. Item I, report of committees. Yukon Health Committee.
No report.
There we go, no report. Land Acquisition Committee.
Nothing new to report.
Green Efforts Committee.
We'll be meeting tomorrow night.
Farmington High School Building Committee.
Where do we start, right? But as everybody knows, the building committee presented to the town council the proposal for the new build, which was approved at the February 4th special meeting. I think it speaks for itself.
I think so. Moving on to the report of council chair and liaisons, the chair report. As you heard when we went through our many minutes, we've been hard at work. This is actually our 5th council meeting since the 14th. We've already begun the budget process, and we've attended 6 different meetings, our council members, for the FHS building project. As we started our term, we did say the building project would be the biggest issue facing Farmington in the coming years. Last Tuesday, we supported the building committee's recommendation of a new building, and I just wanted to give you a few of the reasons that we had for that. The first, the maintain options that they presented did not address the statement of needs and did not guarantee that the high school would be off the watch list for accreditation. The feeling is that would just be, once again, kicking the can down the road and not getting a long-term solution. The renovation and new options all address the statement of needs and accreditation, but the renovation required significantly more time to complete than the new option, and the renovation option posed some higher risks than the new option due to the unknown of working with both remediation issues and working within an existing structure. This left the added cost of the new building as our major remaining obstacle to overcome. So your town council set a lowered cost range for the new high school at a level that we felt could be justified and attained without compromising the building itself or the town finances. Our current debt load in town has improved significantly over the past few years, which lessens the impact of adding spending while continuing to address the capital needs of all of our town and school buildings. So we're committed to looking into all reasonable options as we go forward on this. When we're financing it, you heard us speaking to our state legislators, trying to find out what support they can give us. So we're going to do all we can. We've also heard about senior tax solutions, everything we can to help and lessen the tax impact on our residents for this proposal. Board of Education liaison.
Since the last Board of Education meeting, most of it has been rolled up. I mean, the Board of Ed had the legislative delegation appear before them, talked about maybe more focused issues relative to the Board of Education's concerns. And then, as I noted, much of the meeting was spent with presenting the special services budget and professional staffing budget and outline. Those issues were sort of all rolled up to the presentation of the budget at the meeting this past Saturday. And then wherein the budget at 4.6% was tentatively approved. Subsequent meeting on Monday, amendments or changes were made to the budget, where the Board of Ed budget now, which will be presented to us, is at 3.96%.
Economic Development Commission.
Yes, on January 29th, the EDC hosted their winter business breakfast event at the Farmington Club. The January event explored the substantial transformation of Farmington's medical bioscience corridor. Kyle Richards from Metro Realty outlined how their company has created one of the largest medical office campuses in Connecticut. The event was very well attended, and the next EDC meeting is tomorrow, February 12th at 5:30 p.m. in Town Council chambers.
Thank you. Housing Authority.
Nothing to report. Meeting tomorrow night.
Human Relations Commission.
Yes, Human Relations. They had one meeting last month. As you know, Ruth is stepping down as chair, and they're waiting for the appointment of the new chair. But they did set a couple goals they wanted me to tell you about. They are looking to conduct a needs assessment by June 2020, currently looking at ways to accomplish this goal. And their second is to collaborate with the Farmington High School and request that some of their senior needs assessment projects be presented in front of the commission as a way to further develop needs and assessments by including the Farmington High School students. And their next meeting would be March 25th.
Thank you. Library Board.
Nothing to report.
Town Plan and Zoning.
TPZ had 3 meetings. They've had several sign applications. They had a public meeting last night for a special permit at 79 Main Street, Unionville. I'm sorry, public hearing. And they're going to have another public hearing on February 24th for a zoning change for lots 54, 56, 58, and 8247 Farmington Avenue, along with 43 Crescent Avenue.
Unionville Historic.
Yeah, the recent application of Ion Bank to create a Unionville branch on Main Street revealed to me some communication issues between our boards and commissions. Ion Bank originally went before Architectural Design and Review Committee with their planned building design. They received a lot of feedback and adjusted their plans to accommodate the suggestions they heard. Later on, the Unionville Historic District Commission heard about the proposed branch, and members of the commission had some suggestions regarding the design. The property where Ion's Unionville Bank branch would be located is not in a historic district property. However, there are a few historic properties there on Main Street. Ion ended up coming to the Unionville Historic District Commission to listen to the design suggestions that the committee had. They did not have to do this, but chose to do this out of good faith because they want to be a part of our community. I suggested to the chair of Unionville Historic District Commission that we should meet with the Farmington Historic District Commission and Architectural Design and Review Board. And for future applications, we should encourage the Architectural Design and Review Board to ask for comments from the Historic District Commission so that Architectural Design and Review can incorporate those suggestions, if they so choose, into their process. Farmington and Unionville have always been business-friendly communities, and I think this improvement in communication among our boards will improve the application process for any business looking to locate in our town.
Thank you. UVIA,
Nothing to report.
WPCA,
Nothing to report. This meeting is tomorrow night.
any other liaisons or commissions?
The Farmington Historic District Commission?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
There was some discussion. I'm glad we have a very active historic district, but there was one issue that did come up. There was a request to put a sun window in a house which was facing the street, and it was did not go through. It was not approved, keeping the historic district in good shape.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The report of the town manager.
Just the report is your budget schedule, so please mark your calendars. We do have quite a few meetings coming up over the next couple of months, and our capital budget is our next meeting, February 25th, here at the Town Hall Council Chambers.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve the town manager's report. Do I hear the motion to approve?
I'll make the motion that we approve the town manager's report.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Appointments.
L4.
L4.
This is Josh Allen.
Which one?
L7.
Make a motion for L4 for Jay Tulin as Chair of Human Relations Commission.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Jay.
One more. Agenda item L7, that Josh Allen be appointed to the Retirement Board for a 2-year term beginning immediately and ending January 2022.
Second.
And that comes from the union.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any other appointments? Old business. Hearing none. New business. N1.
And 1, to recommend the purchase of 8489 Meadow Road to the TPZ for a report under Section 8-24 of the State of Connecticut statutes.
Second.
So if you look at the bottom, this is our procedure. You had your public hearing tonight. This motion is to refer it to the TPZ at its February 11th meeting. You're going to get the report back at your March 10th meeting, and then you would be voting on the acquisition on March 10th. So as Bill Wadsworth had described, it's 11.3 acres with the town's appraisal and the acquisition cost at $108,000. And all you're doing tonight is moving it over to TPZ for an 8-24 report.
Anything else we need?
Nope. If you have any questions, that would be the time.
Any questions? Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Agenda item N2, to adopt the attached resolution which authorizes the town manager to sign a grant application for a small cities community development grant and to execute an assist agreement under the Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Program.
Second.
This is just a resolution which authorizes me to receive our money for our block grant, which again, if you remember, we received $900,000 and $800,000, and this is to help do repairs at New Horizons. This is our Small Cities Block Grant Program.
Any discussion?
One question. This all goes to New Horizons?
Yes, it does.
Excellent.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Agenda item N3, to establish a Legal Services Town Council Subcommittee to review legal service service proposals for the appointment of the town attorney, labor attorney, land use attorney, and bond counsel, and to make recommendations on the appointments to the town council.
I think it's Peter and Brian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Go ahead.
Second.
You want me to announce the?
Kathy, you want to describe what we're doing here?
Sure. So this is our Legal Services Committee. As you remember, at your first meeting, we've decided to go out for bid for our legal services. It's best practices to do this every so often. This would be a town council, 2 town council members and myself, that we will go out for bid. It's probably 2 meetings at most, the idea is that we'd probably have someone on board by end of April.
Great. Peter, you want to fill in the committee it consists of?
Well, I will be Peter Master Batista. I will be one of the town council members.
And Brian Conley will be the other town
And
council?
Brian Conley will be the second town council member.
Any discussion? And Kathy Egan Blonsky will be the town manager.
Maybe.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then, as amended.
As amended.
As amended.
The motion passes as amended. The subcommittee consisting of Peter Master Batista, Brian Conley, and Kathy Blonsky.
It's amendments. Agenda, are we ready for?
If he knows the names, he should put the names right in, right? So when you read it, just read that and then put your names in. And then you don't have to do an amendment.
Okay.
Me and Brian.
You. Okay. Agenda item N4, to establish a town council subcommittee to review Article 4 property tax relief for elderly homeowners, local option. Article 5, property tax relief for volunteer firefighters. Article 4, qualifying veterans and surviving spouses. And Article 7, elderly tax freeze program. Chapter 176, taxation of the Code of Town of Farmington, and to determine whether there is a need for ordinance changes. The subcommittee shall consist of Joe Capitaferro, town council member, and Brian Connolly, town council member, and the director of finance, Joe Schwecke.
Second.
So this, again, is part of our strategic plan and goals, and we've talked about it a little bit tonight. So this will be a subcommittee that's going to review our ordinance.
Any discussion?
Just a quick question, Kathy. Under Article 6, that would also include disabled veterans?
Yeah, I think it, yes, I looked it up, and I'm almost positive that the qualifying veterans are the disabled veterans, too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as you heard, this is a quite timely issue. We heard our legislatures talk about it. We had questions about it. We discussed it regarding the Farmington High School Building Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Agenda item N5, to set a public hearing on March 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers on the town manager's fiscal year 2020-21 recommended budget.
Second.
So this would be the public hearing on my budget, and it's March 10th at 7 p.m.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Agenda item N6, to authorize the town manager to sign the attached 184 and 199 town farm lease agreements between the Phillips family and the town of Farmington.
Second.
So I'm sure you've read the backup information. I'm recommending the following modifications in the attached lease agreement. The term of the lease would be 3 years, so it would commence on March 1st and end in February 28th, 2023. On the rent, I'm recommending that we add a rental fee for the land for both the lease agreements, field and residence and barns, at a fee of $35 per acre. This $35 acre charge is consistent with the rental payments for the other farmers who lease farmland for the town. For Sub-Edge Farm, this would equate to an annual payment of $991.90 for the use of 28.34 acres. At this point in time, they don't pay any type of lease fee. The lease would be evaluated prior to its end date in 2023 to determine if any changes in the lease are required before the next renewal. The other thing I did want to mention is that as part of their lease, they do live in the town-owned home. They do pay $1 rent for that, and then they do make a donation as part of the lease of a donation of food of approximately $5,000. So that should be noted too.
Discussion, questions, comments?
No, I just did want to confirm, because I didn't see that it was annual, so I just want to confirm that it was an annual fee, or whether it was a one-time payment for the 3 years.
Annual.
It's an annual, okay, I was just curious.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Agenda item N7 to approve the following property tax refunds as listed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Read.
Thank you.
Oh, look at it right here.
We will be moving into executive session. Before we go, I'd like to make a public comment. Friday is Valentine's Day, everyone remember. Don't want anyone getting in trouble. Also, I will leave you with the quote of the evening before we go. This by Albert Einstein. You cannot blame gravity for falling in love.
On that note, I'll read agenda item 01, executive session to discuss matters concerning the sale or acquisition of real property. In attendance at executive session shall be limited to members of the town council, town manager, and Bill Wallenberg.
Second.
Wadsworth. Wallenberg.
All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're moving into an executive session.